Hello and welcome to Scran, the podcast passionate about the Scottish food and drink scene. I'm your host, Rosalind, and on this episode we're previewing one of the hottest whisky dates on the calendar, the Campbeltown Malts Festival. Despite being one of the smaller whisky regions, Campbeltown really does pack a punch, and I wanted to find out what fans could look forward to at this year's event, particularly the festival bottlings. Glen Scotia recently held a preview event in Edinburgh, where I went along to hear all about the exclusive offerings to be had at the upcoming festival.
I think what a special edition or a limited edition should also do, it should celebrate something or someone, or even if it is just something about the distillery. For us, obviously being the Campbeltown Malts Festival, but it should also be distinctly different.
That's Gary Mills, Global Brand Ambassador, who hosted a session to deconstruct the festival bottling, and what an eye-opener it was. More from Gary shortly. After that session, I chatted with Ashley Smith, Master Blender for Glen Scotia, who will for the first time this year be on hand in her new role. She talks to me about the history of Campbeltown and its whisky heritage, as well as what she's looking forward to at this year's festival.
Traditionally, we're looking at sherry finishes, wine finishes, rum, anything that really works with that lovely oily, robust style.
From Glen Scotia, we go down the road to Springbank. A few days later, I chatted to David Allen, Director of Sales and Marketing for the sought-after whisky. David shared more detail on their festival releases and how they're trying to cope with demand severely outstripping supply.
And these bottlings will be available in 35 cl bottles, and the reason we do that is because the limited stock goes that bit further.
Here's Gary deconstructing Glen Scotia's 9-year-old festival bottling. Oh, and I should say, you'll hear him mention ppm. That stands for phenol parts per million. This number gives an indication of how intense the smoky flavour will be. 54 ppm would be considered quite a heavily peated flavour. Gary also mentions Mr McAllister, who's the distillery manager and master distiller at Glen Scotia Distillery.
The Campbeltown Malts Festival edition has a very, very special place in my heart, always will, from a very biased point of view, because I did the very first one back in 2018, and it was the Ruby Port 2008 vintage, and we've kind of obviously done one from each year from then. The whole rationale behind it is to try and take that celebration of Campbeltown, a celebration of the history, of the heritage, but also celebrating where we are now, celebrating that resurgence of Campbeltown. So we're now at a stage where we're able to do in the region of 25,000 bottles of this, and it allows us to go global. So we know there are only a very small proportion of people that can come to see us in Campbeltown. Like I said, we appreciate it's a difficult place to get to. This allows us to take that celebration truly globally. And it's, like I said, it's putting that spotlight on the town at that time where we're all having that celebration. So what we've got is we're going to have 3 drinks. So this year's is a 9-year-old heavily peated spirit finished in Ribera del Duero wine casks. So the spirit that you have in your hands is the heavily peated first fill bourbon spirit. So it's looking at that base spirit that we have. Limited editions and special editions for me really should be two things. It should be very different from your core range. Still have some of that absolute DNA of the brand, of the distillate in there, but it's realistically it's your permission to go to the outer limits and really kind of stretch the extremes of that DNA and take you to the limits that you maybe wouldn't associate with it with a core range whisky. I think what a special edition or a limited edition should also do, it should celebrate something or someone, or even if it is just something about the distillery, something that's going on at that distillery. Like for us, obviously being the Campbeltown Malts Festival, but it should also be distinctly different. So, Glen Scotia, as you know it, is not necessarily peated. It may come as a shock to most of you that there is peat in a lot of the core range, but it's a very small amount. You're talking 5-10%. The main thing that the peated whiskies in the core range is doing is adding that kind of spice, background spice character to the whiskies that are there. We only produce peat for between 4 and 6 weeks total. In 2016, so 9-year-old means this liquid coming from 2016. Listen, before I go on, let's have a wee smell and a wee nose at the whisky, see what we think. we're looking at 54 ppm, and what hopefully you'll get on the nose is not 54 ppm. It's not what I would expect from that real heavily peated level, and I think this talks to one of Mr. McAllister's favourite words for a very, very good reason: balance. Glen Scotia spirits across the board have a wonderful balance, and it's very evident in this spirit because, again, we are at 59%. Doesn't nose like that at all, and I think, again, when you get it onto the palate, I don't think you'll get that either. On the nose, I get a lot of dry hay. It's a very dusty kind of peat character. So, first fill bourbon, for the record, this is a 2014. This is a wee bit older than the liquid we've used, but that's just got a genuinely amazing balance, I think. I get that kind of not burnt hay, it's that kind of singed hay slightly up front, which softens ever so slightly, but it comes right back. And I think big part of that's to do with the oils, the Campbeltown spirit. Just keeps those flavours in the palate without overwhelming you, for sure. But 2016, we were producing between around 100 and 120,000 litres in a year. To give you the context, we are now pushing 800,000 just now on an annual basis, and kind of doing the sums on where the amount of liquid we've got in this is ultimately every bit of juice that we produced from the peated run in 2016. We're talking 14,000 litres of pure alcohol. I said about 10 to 12% of the whole production of Glen Scotia in that year going into this. I will now dish out number 2, which, no massive surprise, is the Ribera del Duero red wine. It's down to the art of the blending team, selecting the right wood and also kind of selecting that length of finish. The specifics for me are about picking the right wine to go with the right spirit. And that is where, like I said, the blending team and the kind of wood policy and the wood management really kind of comes through to its fore. We have chosen for this one as a Ribera del Duero. The wine region in the northwest of Spain translates to the banks of the Douro, which is a 550-mile long river going from the northwest of Spain through into Portugal. And what that's doing, the river plays a central role to that region from a terroir point of view, ultimately, where water retains heat or retains temperature better than the air around it. It's very dry, it's very arid, so what the river's doing is helping cooling the vineyards. What that also helps do is when the temperature drops overnight, it's stopping the grapes from ripening further, it's locking in those acids, which really helps build a big, bold, fruity red wine. And I think that's what we've got in spades in this one. You're getting a little more spice on this one than you're going to get through, and I think, again, it's a difficult one to be able to do your finishing liquid versus the finished liquid, because you're not necessarily going to be able to correlate direct flavours, X equals X, especially when we think we're only doing a finish of 5 months. It's more about the influence of those casks. So it's just about that, giving you the idea of the fruits and the flavours you're going to get from the red wine from here. So this one is a 2018 oak barrels for 13 months, and this one's at 14%, I think. So in terms of flavour profile, broadly for a Ribera del Duero, it's all about those big, rich, dark fruits. Blackberry, cassis. The mouthfeel on it's magnificent. There's a kind of velvety, kind of vanilla through into the tannins. What I think you were going to get, the fruit layering on top of the Glen Scotia spirit. So Campbeltown spirits are big, robust flavours. They are oily. There is sea salt. There's that salinity. There is the spice kind of through the finished whiskies. For Glen Scotia, it's a fruit character, so we do a very long fermentation, which gives us a kind of red apple more through Glen Scotia. And the layering of that red fruit on top of the Glen Scotia spirit is just wonderful.
So the wine smells amazing. You could have a big glass of that with like a steak or something. It's really nice. Big bold flavours, like Gary said. I'm getting the vanilla and the black currant fruits. The whiskey, I was getting more sort of like smoky barbecue, sweet barbecue than hay, but I know what he means. And it's really, really spicy and got a very long finish. So I'm intrigued to see what the two combined are like.
Right, Andy's going to come round and now fill your empty glass with the finished product. 9 years old. Finished for 5 months in the Ribera del Duero, and we are at 54.3, so full cask strength, natural colour, non-chill filtered, all the kind of good things you really expect from a limited edition Campbeltown single malt whisky. it's one of the kind of key principles of the Campbeltown Malts Festival edition as well, is that cask strength, natural colour. It's allowed us a flexibility to use and go a bit heavier handed on some of the cask finishes that we maybe wouldn't do through the core range. Put more focus on that cask finish rather than the classic Campbeltown style. So it's in first fill bourbon for the first 8 years, 7 months. And then the final 5 months in the Ribera del Duero, where you still get the influence, you still get that very clear red fruit influence, but it doesn't subdue that Campbeltown spirit too much. Here, obviously, we are focusing much more on that heavily peated element, which I think doesn't come through as much on the nose. I don't, obviously, versus the heavily peated spirit, because that's what that was. But it allows more of the bourbon influence to come through. I'm getting the vanilla. I do get a bit of the salinity on the nose, actually. Let's get there you go. Sanjivar. So I get that burnt hay up front again, but then it's through into those unctuous red fruits. Darker fruits again, I'm probably getting more cherry, personally, for me. Yeah, then through the vanilla, and that salinity just comes through with that drying tannins at the end. So, hopefully that's given you a little insight into this year's limited edition festival release.
Yeah, it's really, really lovely. It does smell a bit less peated. It's still quite spicy on the finish, but yeah, a lot more fruits, as Gary said. You can tell that it's a sort of marriage of the two, and it definitely doesn't taste like it's the ABV that it has. It's really lovely. I've actually got quite a few of their previous years. It reminds me of, they did a really nice red wine finish a few years ago. It reminds me a bit of that, although I don't think that was peated. I think it'd go really well with cheese, because the other one does. Yeah, I think if you do like a peated whiskey, you'll love it. If you're not 100% sure, I think you'll still be worth trying it because it's not too strong. Yeah, it's really good. It's really nice whiskey.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I started by asking Ashley to tell us a little about the history of Campbeltown and its whiskey. You'll hear an excerpt from the session she gave on 10 years of Victoriana too.
It's a region with such rich history, especially when it comes to distillation. It's one of the 5 whisky making regions. To be classed as a whisky region, you have to have a minimum of 3 distilleries. So Glen Scotia is one of the remaining 3 distilleries based in Campbeltown. Obviously today it's legal, but back in the sort of 1700s, late 1700s, there was really a lot of illicit distillation going on in the entire peninsula, and that was really down to the implementation of the Wash Act in 1784, which drove distillation underground. Campbeltown became the whisky capital of the world, or it was known as the whisky capital of the world, and it's really down to the geography and the history of the region that allowed it to become such a boom town during that time. There was a number of favourable factors. So when the Wash Act of 1784 was repealed in 1823, all these illicit distillers came up from underground, and there was a local skilled workforce that were able to take advantage of that boom period and the demand for whiskey. Loads of natural resources, so farmland in abundance for growing barley. There's history, records even, of mining taking place on the entire peninsula as far back as the 1600s, so they had a local cheap fuel source. The Duke of Argyll had commissioned the creation of Cross Hill Lock, so there was soft water, clean water for the distilleries to use for process cooling water, and just down to its natural geography, it's in a deep natural harbour. This would be the first port of call for ships coming in from the New World, taking shelter from the North Atlantic, so bringing in casks from across the New World, sherries, ports, wines, and with the invention of the steam engine in the Victorian age as well, steam puffers would have meant that Glasgow was just a few hours away from Campbeltown, so a real favourable set of circumstances which led to Campbeltown being such a rich distilling town.
Yeah, so at one point it went down to 2 distilleries, there's now 3, but there's a bit of a resurgence happening, is that right?
That's correct. So as I said, to be classed as a whisky making region, you have to have a minimum of 3 distilleries. At one point there was up to 26 operational distilleries at any one time in Campbeltown. It's not got quite to those heady heights yet, but there are a couple new distilleries on the horizon, and I think that's such a fantastic thing for the region. arguably, in terms of flavour, it's one of the most distinctive and recognisable, that lovely, oily, robust spirit, that maritime influence. And yeah, the more of the stuff, the better.
And it would probably do a lot for the festival as well, like having a few other distilleries.
That's true. Each of the distilleries has their own day that celebrates their unique spirit. So obviously there's that unique, oily, robust Campbeltown style. The thread runs through the 3 distilleries, but we all have our unique core range, but also our unique histories. And the Malts Festival is really a celebration not only of the distilleries, but the community and the towns as well. And so Glen Scotia will be hosting guests on the 20th of May. There'll be live music, tasting, workshops. I'll be hosting a decade of Victoriana, which is one of our multi-award winning core range whiskies, which really celebrates and pays homage to the history and the whiskies coming out of Campbeltown during the boom time. There'll be a dunnage tasting with Ian McAllister, who's our master distiller and distillery manager, walking tours. There's just a whole host of really fun activities that brings the community together and allows people to really get a feel for what Campbeltown is all about, and obviously on the 20th of May get a feel for what Glen Scotia is really all about as well.
And as part of that, you've got your festival bottling coming out, which we've had a little sneak peek tonight. Could you tell us a bit about the process of how that all comes together?
So it's planned pretty far in advance of the festival itself. It's a really collaborative effort with marketing, the distillery, members of the community, getting a feel for what they really love about Glen Scotia. But ultimately, the festival release is something that we can really showcase what Glen Scotia is all about. And when it comes to cask finishes, we want to be really sympathetic to the history of Glen Scotia and that maritime coastal influence, so casks that were coming in from the New World on the ships taking berth in the natural deep harbour that Campbeltown is located in. So traditionally we're looking at sherry finishes, wine finishes, rum, anything that really works with that lovely oily robust style. And this year's festival is finished for 5 months in Ribera del Duero casks. They're from the Castile y Leon region in the north of Spain, and they work really well with that oily robust style that is really synonymous with Glen Scotia, adding a layer of sweetness. The festival bottlings really allow us to experiment and showcase some really rare whiskies, and with Glen Scotia only having a 4-week peated run, this heavily peated spirit that we're showcasing in this year's festival is a really rare gem, and I'm so excited to share it with people.
What are you most looking forward to this year?
I am really excited. This is my first outing as Master Blender of Glen Scotia at the festival. I've visited festivals and attended festivals in the past, but to see it from that lens and get chatting to folk in the local community and getting their feedback on the spirit it's going to be such a joy. And really it's such a wonderful place to be during the festival. There's such life and joy and fun going on in the town. In the Victorian age, with the invention of the steam engine, there would have been steam puffers going between Campbeltown and the blending houses in Glasgow in a matter of hours, which was a huge advantage for Campbeltown versus some of the distilleries in the Highlands and Speysides, where it could take days, if not weeks, for the whisky to be transported. But with these steamships, the sherry casks were being transported between the blending houses and Campbeltown itself. And as I say, there's some really fun records where there's been some arguments between the distillers themselves and the blending houses about who actually owns the casks and who's going to pay for the transport back and forth between the distilleries and the blend house itself. And so we've elected, which is your next drink tonight, we finish Victoriana and PX casks as well for 1 year. So we take the backbone, the base blend, and
You've talked about 10 years of Victoriana, we've talked about the potential future of Campbeltown whisky. in 10 years' time, the Campbeltown Malts Festival, what would you like to see?
That is a fantastic question. Just more of the same, really. If you get the chance to come up to the Wee Toon and visit during the festival, you'll just get such a sense of community and enjoy and embrace everything that Campbeltown is about. Obviously, Glen Scotia featuring heavily. Celebrating 20 years of Victoriana would be an absolute amazing thing to do. We're actually celebrating 10 years of the Malts Festival, I believe, in 2028. So, yeah, just going from strength to strength.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to chat to you.
And I'll see you there. I'm now joined by David Allen, the Sales and Marketing Director for Springbank in Campbeltown. Hi David, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you. So we are going to chat a little bit about what you guys are up to for the Malts Festival, but for anyone that doesn't know, could you just tell me a little bit about Springbank? I know you're one of the sort of cult whiskies in Scotland.
Yeah, well, we were founded back in 1828, and for anybody that's been to visit us, you probably think not much has changed since 1828. We're a very traditional distillery, using very traditional methods to make our whiskey, a very hands-on approach. And I think we're still actually the only distillery that can claim to do 100% of the process on site. So all our malting is done on our malt floors at Springbank. So we don't buy in any malt at all. Every last drop of whiskey has come from barley, which has been malted on our own malt floors, which is a sort of space and time and resource sort of consuming process, which is why lots of other people don't do it. Then, right through to the production, even the bottling is carried out on site in Campbeltown. So we, make a fairly small amount of whiskey using a lot of people. So very inefficient, in other words.
And is it that sort of small batch method that makes it so sought after? Like, you've gone from, you've probably not changed very much, but your profile has gone kind of through the roof and there's queues at the door for the shop and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think society is very much more interested in the provenance of what they're eating and drinking, and there's more sort of education available, and people are just sort of finding their way to us. As you say, we've not really changed anything that we're doing, but I guess our processes and the way we run our business just resonates with more and more people now. And we didn't make enough whiskey, or the previous generation didn't make enough whiskey for their current demand, and we're kind of in this sort of situation where there's queues out the doors for on release day and in many other days throughout the year. And Springbank is quite a difficult whiskey to get hold of now.
Yeah. Which makes your festival day probably very busy. So you just tell us a little bit about what events you've got coming up for the Campbeltown Malts Festival.
Originally, our Malts Festival was one day. It was a Springbank open day, just one day during the week, but it's sort of grown, and we've got events on all through the week where we have a charity tasting on a Monday night. This year, for the first time ever, we're taking people out to one of the farms that grows local barley for us, where they can try some local barley and meet the farmer who's grown the barley. We have a malts dinner where people come along and have a dinner in our malt barns and take away a bottle of whiskey that they've sort of picked from one of the casks that they were able to sample. And then on the day itself, we have lots of different events. We have sort of free events like live malting demonstrations, lots of tastings, some of which will be maybe specific to what's in our cage in our shop, special cask samples. Another tasting will be sort of new and forthcoming releases, so you're getting a chance to taste what's coming up in the future. We have our open day bottles, we have local traders joining in live music. It's just a lot of fun, really, and a lot of whiskey.
Yeah, and do you find that it's really, really busy as well? So all the people who would be wanting to come and buy anyway are then coming to Campbeltown to see you for these events? Yeah,
it's really busy. I think the biggest barrier to growing the festival in Campbeltown is the accommodation supply. Over the course of a week, I think we have something like 2,000 tickets available for different events. So if you manage to make it to Campbeltown, you should be able to get onto something, whether it's a bookable on the day event or something like that. Or I think we still have some spaces on our Friday, our Kilkerran open day, on the cocktail sessions. So there's still tickets available for people to come, but because we're so far away from everything else, people generally need accommodation. And unless you are lucky enough to snap up some accommodation a year in advance, you'll probably need to use a campsite somewhere, which is fine. So yeah, we're busy, and the reputation has grown and grown, and more people want to come and join us, which is great.
And you mentioned Kilkerran there. For anyone that doesn't know, could you just explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so Kilkerran is made at our sister distillery, Glen, so that's just basically next door to Springbank. We produce at Springbank Distillery for 9 months of the year, and then for the last 3 months of the year, our production guys move up to Glen to produce Kilkerran single malt for the last 3 months. And it's just turned 21 yesterday, actually. So it's quite a new distillery with a sort of long history, originally founded back in 1872 by one of the brothers who founded Springbank, or was working at Springbank. And as many families do, the two brothers had an argument. So William left Springbank to set up Glengyle. It closed down in the 1920s, but we resurrected it at the turn of the millennium. In 2004, the stills are running again. So it's an important part of Campbeltown's whisky history, and gives us the third distillery in the region, so we can maintain that regional status. So it's an important distillery, and the whisky that we have there is the Kilkerran single malt. We felt that was enough to justify having its own open day as well, which is much the same format. We have tastings and live music and local trades and crafts selling their produce as well.
And what about your festival bottlings? I mean, I know a lot of people come to see the distillery and meet people and experience the whole area, but a lot of people, what they want is the festival bottling. So what have you got this year?
We have a different bottling for every single malt that we produce. So we have a Springbank 10-year-old this year. So the standard 10-year-old that we produce, which is our flagship whisky, is bottled at 46%. So we thought it'd be quite fun to do a cask strength Springbank 10-year-old for the festival. Hazelburn, which is our triple distilled non-peated single malt that we produce. It's a 19-year-old and has spent the full 19 years in fresh tawny port casks. So it's a nice older Hazelburn in the lineup. Then we have a long row 10-year-old, which has been matured in fresh Oloroso casks, as well as a nice sort of rich sherried long row, our more heavily peated whisky. And then our Kilkerran bottling on the Friday is going to be a 20-year-old single cask bottling as well. And these bottlings will be available in 35 cl bottles. And the reason we do that is because the limited stock goes that bit further. We were aware that there was lots of people would come down to the festival for bottles, and we'd have sold out of our festival bottling within the first couple of hours. So we introduced these smaller bottles that are a bit cheaper as well, because they're half the size. And if you turn up later on in the day, you should still be able to get a festival bottling. So what we're trying to do is, I guess, discourage people from queuing overnight for our festival bottlings. You don't need to do that. You can come down, enjoy the day, do some tastings, and then rock up in the afternoon and get yourself any of the bottlings that are available.
And how far in advance do you guys work for these things? Like, do you know what, for example, do you know what next year's festival bottling is going to be for all the brands?
No, not as far as that. It'd be great to be that organised. We kind of have a fair idea of maybe what casks are available to us, what pockets of casks are available. So we kind of maybe have a few years worth of ideas, but we don't really firm anything up until maybe 6 months before the festival. And as usual, it's a nice job sort of going through the stocks and selecting casks and putting something together that people are going to appreciate.
Yeah, that sounds like a great job. So what is it that you look forward to most about the festival? It's
definitely just seeing everybody. We get people from all over the world, from Australia, from the US, from Asia. And I still can't believe that they come all the way down to the bottom of the Mull of Kintyre just for a malts festival. But it's great. So you meet so many different nationalities. Lots of people come every year, so it's just good to catch up with people. And we're all here because of the whisky and just sharing stories, sharing drams, and just good vibes, really. And then, the tastings that we do seem to become more relaxed and informal every year as people just get accustomed to the sort of Campbeltown Malts Festival vibe. So a great week, really. It's not even fair to say sort of day or 2 days, because people have started coming for a full sort of Monday to Saturday now. So I mean, and that's another thing that's great for local bed and breakfast restaurants and everyone. So, the community is benefiting from what started off originally as just one day and now grown into this week-long festival. And
with the new distilleries that are coming down the line, I know they're maybe a little bit far off, but do you see it becoming even bigger? Like, could it become like Fèis on Islay in terms of like that wee bit longer and, you're having more distilleries opening?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully. Yeah, and actually invite some of the distilleries to our open day, and so they can come and showcase plans and talk to people about, when they're going to be breaking ground and what they're planning to do. So, yeah, we very much encourage that. And again, if it encourages people to come and visit us, even outside of the Malts Festival, and makes Campbeltown more of a sort of destination, as you say, sort of as maybe Islay is, or Speyside of Campbeltown can be a bigger destination to draw people. So they stay here for longer than a couple of days, all the better. So
how can people find out more about the festival?
Yeah, if anybody has, any of your listeners want any information about the festival, if they go onto our website, we have a designated email address, festival@springbank.scot, yeah. They can email that, get some information, keep up with our socials. We'll be posting there. Something we've maybe not done previously is broadcast sort of live from the day and things like that, and we'll try and do a bit more of that this year so people get a real understanding of the atmosphere, and hopefully come along next year if they haven't made it this year.
So I know we've mentioned the new distilleries, but how do you think the festival can grow over the next few years?
We have something like 2,000 tickets available for our various bits and pieces, tastings and dinners throughout the week. So we're kind of probably at capacity for what we can do. So I guess we are relying on other distilleries or independent bottlers. We have Cadenheads, our sort of sister bottler. They sort of run events throughout the whole week as well. And if Glen Scotia can, expand what they're doing, all the better. And then, as you say, the next part of that will be the new distilleries coming on board and doing their own events as well.
And just looking to the rest of 2025, do you have anything exciting coming up you can tell us about?
We do have, it's a new whisky that we're going to launch as part of the Springbank core range. So the Springbank 10-year-old is really our flagship whisky from Springbank, but we're going to introduce a Springbank 5-year-old 100 proof. So it's 5 years old. 100 proof means it's bottled at 57.1% ABV. And for the first time in our core range, the maturation of this whisky will be 100% bourbon cask. So normally the other whiskies, the 10, the 12, 15, are usually a mixture of bourbon and sherry casks, or all sherry in case of the 15. So we thought it'd be really cool to bottle a younger Springbank in bourbon to really sort of showcase the character of the spirit and the sort of, it's like the 10-year-old but more amplified almost, with the volume turned up. So it's a great whiskey, and it means there's going to be a bit more Springbank in the market and hopefully on the shelf for people to come across and be able to buy a bottle, not be too scared about finishing it and not knowing where the next bottle's coming from.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? There must be, the people who love it. My partner's mum lives in Macranish, and for Christmas a few years she got us the caged bottles, and we drank them because we wanted to drink them. And I think there'll be a lot of people who are like, oh my goodness, you shouldn't have done that. But yeah, I guess there's people who want to just drink it because they love it, and then there's the people who are really seeking it out because they know it's worth something in the secondary market. So yeah, if you guys can get maybe a bit more out there, maybe that might help more people try it.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the most frustrating thing about Springbank in the last maybe sort of 5+ years, is that it's become so scarce, and people outside of your usual sort of whiskey circles find something that's limited and scarce. They can flip it and make a profit on it. So we found that our traditional customers and drinkers are sort of losing out to people who are prepared to queue up overnight for bottles, or use software to get bottles online. And then even in our own supply chain, we have to be wary of people potentially enhancing the price to take advantage of that demand, whereas we really want our whiskey to be fairly priced so people will drink it and not be too scared to open it, and hopefully come back and buy another bottle, because that's how whiskey business works. It's repeat customers. So the whiskey's no good sitting in somebody's cupboard and tucked away in an attic somewhere. So we want people to drink it and buy more.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, and I'm looking forward to trying the 5-year-old if I can. But yeah, thank you very much. It's been lovely to meet you and chat to you, and I'll hopefully see you in May.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thanks to my guests for being on this episode, and thanks to you too for listening. Please remember to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Scran. Scran is co-produced and hosted by me, Rosalind Erskine, and co-produced, edited and mixed by Kelly Crichton. And if you love whisky, please sign up to our Scotsman Whisky Club newsletter, which will be going live later this month. You can do so by going to www.scotsman.com/newsletter.